Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Oregon Conservation Partnership webinar. Today's webinar is with Bobby Riggers from OWEB, and it is on OWRIO, the Oregon Watershed Restoration Inventory Online. And it's titled OWRIO, the Clone Wars Mainland Reporting Restoration Project. Bobby is the expert on this topic. She's been with OWEB since the GWEB era back in 1998. And OWRIO also existed then, so this is a really wonderful content inventory that you all are contributing to. Before I turn it over to Bobby, just a few housekeeping items. You can ask questions throughout by typing into the question box, or you can wait until the end, and at that point you can either type them in again, and I'll be keeping an eye on those, or at the end, you can click the little hand icon in your dashboard, and I will unmute you so you can ask your question directly to Bobby. There will be a poll for you all to participate in a few minutes into the webinar, so stay attentive. You can multitask, but we would really appreciate your answers so Bobby can tailor her presentation to what's most useful for you. As usual, there will also be a brief survey at the end of the webinar. Please take that so we can continue to offer these really valuable resources to you all. We want to know what's most useful for you, and we want to hear your suggestions for future webinar topics as well. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, OWEB, for helping us bring you these educational webinars that happen every month. Next month, I don't know whether there will be a webinar, just to note about that, but stay tuned, subscribe to our newsletter on the website, and watch our recorded webinars also on the Oregon Conservation Partnership website. So with that, I will turn it over to Bobby. And Bobby, you are ready to go.
Okay, can you guys see my screen? Oh, I see. Okay. Great. Thanks, Anna and Mary, helping with the webinar. I really appreciate the Oregon Conservation Partnership hosting our session today. And thanks everyone else for participating. I hope everyone is safe and that you can relax and navigate our tutorial today. So I wanted to start out by just visiting the OWEB homepage, and then looking over at the right-hand side under Project Data and Reporting, we have one of the categories is the Oregon Watershed Restoration Inventory. So we're going to click on that link. And then this directs you to the overview page of the inventory. And just a few tidbits. If the Oregon, the restoration inventory is considered the single largest restoration information database in the Western United States. And we have submissions on nearly 19,000 projects completed since 1995. The ORI objectives were to measure progress for the Oregon Plan and tracking voluntary restoration measures. And it was also to inform watershed assessments and future restoration project implementation and prioritization, and to support effectiveness monitoring of restoration activities. As you can imagine, having 19,000 projects, that's a pretty big lift. That's engagement by a lot of different partners. That's years of voluntary reporting by restoration practitioners such as the private timber industry, the Department of Forestry on state forests. That's watershed councils and soil and water conservation districts and tribes and county public works. There's a whole variety of folks that have been reporting over the years. So this is not just an OWEB database. This is not just projects funded by OWEB, but this is a database that's the central repository of restoration actions in Oregon. Some of you may know there's some projects that aren't in this database, just kind of based on how people decided to manage their own restoration projects. BPA projects are often not in here unless BPA was a cooperator with one of those other entities I mentioned. And another big group would be some of the land managers in Oregon, like the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM. They had way back in I think it was back in the 1998 through 2000 era, they developed their own reporting mechanism, and that's changed over time, but they had regional obligations to report up to Congress and so forth, so they ended up managing their own systems. So having these 19,000 projects, and that really doesn't even cut into all the federal projects or some of the BPA funded projects, it's still, it's pretty impressive. So I just kind of want to go down, we're going to skip over reporting projects because that's really what this whole webinar is about, is to give you a tutorial on how to report projects and make you feel comfortable reporting projects. I'm giving you some shortcuts, and we're really going to emphasize the cloning shortcut in this webinar. So for retrieving data from OWRIO, what that means is that the data on the projects, and the 19,000, so I kind of want to preface that by saying that there's probably 18,000 projects right now that are sitting online on a website called the Oregon Explorer. And that's because some projects, we've been getting projects through this last year that we're still processing the data. We're doing the quality assurance and quality control on those projects. And then there is also a set of projects that we have opted not to include on Oregon Explorer, and those were the Weed Board grant funded projects. So those types of things, you can always contact me if you have an interest in something that isn't available online, but we're really trying to promote that we have this data set of projects that's pretty much the breadth of the inventory. The whole suite of activities is available to view on Oregon Explorer through this Oregon Watershed Restoration Mapping tool, and then also available for data download of the database and all the data elements in Microsoft Access or Microsoft Excel. And that's through a wonderful partnership with Oregon State University and the Institute for Natural Resources, who have hosted our data site, hosted that site with our data set for export for many years. Then we also have data that are, we have reporting obligations to the Oregon State Legislature, and so every 2 years the data are summarized in the Oregon Plan for Salmon and Watershed Reports. We have reports to Congress, like and that one I want to mention, that is a specific subset of data that are OWEB grants that paid for work that were done in salmon recovery domains. And so the restoration inventory helps to supplement that reporting by recording the actual accomplishments from restoration grants, and that is compared to what was proposed in the grant application. And along with that and some summary information that's a narrative, then NOAA can review those projects and see how we're being accountable for spending those federal dollars. And so that's in their report to Congress. This and then also the upload that we do into the PCSRF, Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery Fund database. The Conservation Registry was kind of a data upload we did many years ago, and they haven't really been asking for regular additions to that, but I think maybe they're getting those directly from Oregon Explorer now, and that's something I just want to mention to you, is that any of you that want to go get a copy of the database and see all the different work that's been done in Oregon, you can visit Oregon Explorer and download the tables. Since it is a relational database, I recommend using the Microsoft Access version, but we have tried to build in enough flattening of the relational tables into columns that you could then filter on to get to data that might be of interest to you. So now I want to switch over to talking about reporting projects. And as many of you know, and I don't know, maybe this would be a good time to do our polling questions, but how about if I'm gonna go through this first little bit here, and then I think we'll set it up to do the poll, because my assumption is that most of you in attendance today are here to learn how to report a project and how to make life easier for you reporting projects. And maybe there are some folks on the phone that are have some other curiosity about the inventory. So, but the so OWRI, as I fondly call the Oregon Watershed Restoration Inventory, we encourage reporting on all types of watershed restoration projects. The activities are designed to restore aquatic, riparian, estuarine, wetland, upland, or overall watershed conditions or functions. They need to be completed projects or completed phases of projects, and they need to be activities that are above and beyond normal maintenance. And what we mean by that is that we do get a lot of road improvement projects reported on forest lands, and that was intended so that that folks could report all the good work they're doing to address chronic road sedimentation and on the old legacy roads. It's not really intended to be reporting the construction of new roads. So, and we always mention or have this here where we say, see the Oregon Aquatic Habitat Restoration and Enhancement Guide for descriptions of treatments. Obviously, that's a very old document, and we know that there are constantly new innovations in restoration and in how to construct projects. So things like, you could still report those things as well, even if they're not in the guide. Obviously, beaver dam analogs installations, that's a good one to consider reporting, or stage 0 projects. And so for defining your project, OWRI uses a broad definition to ensure that we can include all restoration efforts in the inventory, but a restoration project is characterized by being a spatially discrete planning area, and whose planning area is generally distinct and different from other planning efforts. And that's where we get into talking about phases of projects, because if you're reporting phase 2 of a project, we want you to start off then by saying phase 2 starts, or phase 1 was this work and this cost and these accomplishments. Phase 2 is completely separate from that, in terms of we're not going to double count those costs as we go on to report phase 2. So so what I want to point out about defining a project is that OWRI and NOAA have some guidance that we kind of want you to know, and that's that if you're reporting on a grant, for example, then the thing that some folks don't quite realize is we're not just asking you to report one OWRI project. It should be based on work sites. So if your project is over a half a mile, if there is wood placement that's being done in multiple streams, and those streams are over half a mile apart, they should be reported as a separate work site, especially if the stream has a different name. you worked in 3 streams, those should each be recorded at separate work sites. And our GIS specialist is really good about notifying me when she goes to map the project and she finds that that these projects are quite a ways apart, or these culverts are in, you know, different areas. We do need those to be reported separately. There is some understanding with our partners in the timber industry that if they're working in a large road system and it's contiguous road, but there's several fish passage culverts along there, that they often will report those under the same project, because that they're also reporting the work done along the road. Even, you know, maybe they're fixing a mile of road and there's a couple of different culverts there. So you know, just, you know, use your best judgment, but we don't want projects to become so large that we're reporting several sub-basins on the same project. And as you can see by the information on the screen here, you are allowed to report weed grants by sub-basin. And I think most often those are all within one sub-basin, but I really appreciate, like, the folks in Curry County, they're so good about splitting their projects up by sub-basins, so I wanted to give a shout out to them. There's so many others that are really good about splitting projects up by work site, and it's really appreciated, because then we're not having to follow up with you later on. So the required reporting is a good portion of our project reporting. Back when the inventory first started, there was about 75% reporting was all voluntary. There was nothing that was requiring them to report, and it was amazing. And I think as OWEB became a larger funder partner, then you know, we have a lot of these other projects had been completed where there were issues with roads and sedimentation and needing structure and complexity, and then the need for helicopter log placement or something that, you know, required a little more funding. People would then apply for OWEB grants, and so there's definitely been an uptick in OWEB reporting over time. And the other reporting has decreased a little bit, but the required reporting, as you can see here, is OWEB funded restoration and water acquisition projects, the ODFW funded restoration and enhancement projects that specifically do in-stream enhancement, not things like building a new boat ramp or things like that. And then projects completed under DSL wetland permits or large wood and boulder placement permits. So all the other reporting we get is voluntary. And we have a deadline that we list here. This is specifically for our annual call for data. So if you are reporting under an OWEB grant, your reporting deadline is going to be whatever it is to be in compliance with that grant and to be able to make finalize all of your reporting so that you can receive your final payment. But we do an annual call for data that goes out to all restoration practitioners, but it's specifically designed to recruit voluntary reporting of projects. And so we put that out in February, and we request that data be submitted by March 31st. And it's for anything from the previous calendar year or anything that may not have gotten reported yet. So like it says here, we do accept submissions throughout the year. So I'm hoping that now would be a good time for Anna to send out the polling questions. I'm going to take myself off the webcam now. I have no idea what this looked like, but but I do want to mention that because of the coronavirus, we are practicing social distancing, and you're seeing part of my living room, but
Okay, looks like we got most people. So I'm going to close that poll, and here are your results. And should I launch all the polls now, Bobby?
Yeah, go ahead and launch all the questions.
Okay, we have a few questions for you all, and we appreciate your help.
Wow. Well, welcome, the 42%. That's amazing that some of you are doing it for the first time. That's really awesome.
Next question, how often? And one last thing for you all. I'm really curious about this one.
Oh, can you leave that? Oh, sorry. Can you leave it up?
I can share it again.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
there you go.
They're removed a little bit, so I just wanted to see which ones I have to assign to which one. Okay, that's combined with that one. 0.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone. That really helps me, and actually that is what I prepared for, so I'm amazed that I wasn't expecting to know my audience that well, but so moving along, we're gonna click on the report your project here, and this is where I mentioned that the reason, so we call this OWRI because it's a little bit easier to say than OWRI, which is the way I usually kind of say it out. But the person who built this tool for us, we worked for a while to build it even before it was launched in March of 2011. But he was so excited to be able to have this acronym that he could say OREO like the cookie. He just thought that was really fun. So that's where we're at. That's what we fondly refer to it as, OREO. But so OREO, like I mentioned, was released to the public in 2011. It was built with feedback from OWRI users, which we call respondents. And those are the people doing restoration work and reporting the projects. And OWRI reporting used to be on paper up until that point. But having it online, it enables users to manage their reporting online and have electronic viewing access to the project information. So I'm just going to kind of step you through this first page. This is the ORIO homepage. It's where you create a user ID and password if you don't already have one. It's since looking at the polling question about who's attending, my understanding is that most of the people in attendance today are OWEB grantees. And I just want to mention that I understand that at OWEB, we ask you to log into a lot of different interfaces. We've built a lot of tools. And we actually, when we built this tool, this actually helped to move the whole grant application online process forward, because we could show proof of concept with this online tool, and the lessons learned from it helped to inform the building of the online grant application and the online project completion reporting and other things. But this rollout was specific to the audience was the public. It wasn't just OWEB grantees. And so we actually had to have a way for anyone to be able to get to this spot and log in. As you know, with the OWEB reporting, there is a specific password that you have to work with someone from our staff to get assigned a user ID and password. So that's why you have to log into this separate interface, and for the time being, they are separate. But with our continuous improvement planning, we are always, hoping that that we will make these systems more integrated in the future. So we welcome reporting of completed restoration projects, and we rely on that combination of mandatory and voluntary reporting that we talked about. This sentence here, it says ORIO users may view existing projects upon request. And I'm going to show you what that means in a second. But it is something, if you're taking notes at all, it's called populate my list. So we'll be looking at that. And then the next sentence, for existing ORI projects, users may view individual project data or see a summary of project results. That is called summarize my projects, and we'll be also taking a look at that. So running through these ORIO features, enter your data at one sitting or many sessions. I guess since you're working in the grant application, you're definitely familiar with this, but you create and save a project record, and you come back to it anytime, and you can edit and verify. And when you feel like submitting it, then, or you feel comfortable submitting it, then you can go ahead and submit it. And you also can view your data at any time. The data are electronically stored, so you may view any submitted projects in a PDF format. Sharing responsibilities with project partners. I'm not sure how many people are taking advantage of this opportunity, but I absolutely love this feature. It was requested via feedback from our initial system testers. And the first example of this was a person with the project's fiscal information was based in Roseburg. It was a watershed council. And the biologist who had provided the technical assistance for the project, his office was in Coos Bay. And what was really cool about this feature being added, that they requested it, and they said they wanted to be able to work together on this report. And we were able to offer that they could work on the report together, and they could work on it even at the same time, because one of them's editing one part and the other one's editing another part. And so what you have to do is the first person has to create the project stub, and then the other person can then request to see that in their list view, and so then they can click in to edit. But the fiscal administrator could put in the participants and the funding and everything they know about the grant, and then the biologist could record treatments and metrics and other site details, and then once everything's done, then they get to decide who will hit the submit button. Oh, that's right. She showed me how to increase the text size. There. Sorry about that. Hopefully that's a better view. So verify the project, that's just making sure that that you have everything that's required gets entered, and we'll see that as we walk through reporting. And the clone project feature, this is a most handy feature, and hence the title of the webinar. And I really want to impress upon you that cloning will save you time no matter what. And this should be your primary approach to reporting a project. And then the upload map feature, after a file is uploaded, users may view or download the file. You could share your whole report with another user, kind of like having this person help you report. If you have someone that needs to see your report when it's done, you can, they could create a login and then request this project ID in their list of projects, and then they could view it remotely or electronically themselves. So the other reason that for our purposes, we need the map so that we can add this to our geo database. So our GIS staff maps the project based on the map details. The customized interface for Oregon State Weed Board program users. This starts when you answer the very first question on the screen. And so I'll show you that in a second, but basically if there's a weed grant, the questions that come after that are tailored specifically to weed grants. And so no one else has to see those requirements. And once those questions once they're answered and submitted, then someone from the Oregon Department of Agriculture reviews those. And then the last thing, see a list of all treatments available. That's another thing that I'll show you when we are looking at the reporting of specific activities. So I'm going to log in. And mine takes a little bit longer to refresh because I've got a bunch of people's projects attached to my list. So the screen is just refreshing right now.
Abby, while it's loading, I have a question. Why might someone want to report voluntarily if they don't have an OWRIO grant for the project?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with the partnerships that we have in Oregon. There's, like, for example, the engagement with the timber industry, you know, with the onset of the Oregon Plan for Salmon and Watersheds, I think that a lot of people felt initially like maybe they were reporting or putting resources into reporting to prevent a coho listing. But then when they saw such a positive response from the public about the good work that they were doing and the investments that they were making, then they were able to feature those things in some really cool publications. And I just think that getting that public recognition was really valuable, and they are wonderful partners in this whole effort to restore watersheds.
Great, yeah, so that the data can be really powerful in communicating with the public and decision makers and other conservationists too. Thank you.
Yeah. So I told you that I would show you a couple of things over here. The overview, if you hover over that, that's gonna show you kind of the stuff that we saw before we actually popped into ORIO. So if people are navigating straight to ORIO and they really need to review how to define a project, which projects are eligible to report and things like that, then click the overview to see that. Populate my list. This is where you would click in here to send me an email and say, I'm a new council coordinator and I'm sure that someone has reported projects to OWRIO in the past, but I don't, when I create a user ID and password, I have nothing on my list. Can you please help me out? I mean, you can make it as brief as I want to see all the projects from this watershed council, send, and I can add those projects to your list. So, or you may not even be reporting projects to OWRIO. Maybe you're working for an agency and you need to see projects in a certain, like the Alsea Basin or something. Please send me projects from Alsea Basin. Click send, and I can attach those to your view. And what's nice about it is the next feature, which is called Summarize My Projects. So this was another thing that was built with feedback from users. They said, I'm gonna have to present at the Network of Oregon Watershed Councils or something. Or actually usually it's a more localized board meeting or something. And so if you have all of your own projects existing online, because some of you reported them on paper years ago, now all of those can be accessible. Anything you ever reported can be accessible and on your list. So by clicking summarize, clicking this top left-hand side button and say summarize, that's going to summarize all the projects submitted that are in this list that I like this is my list that I have currently. I have 13, 15 projects on here. And this is summarizing project results. And so you can see how many projects have that result. So how many projects did in-stream activities out of this 315 or sorry, 1,315, and how many miles they treated. I do want to mention that these project results are by no means the entirety of project results that we are tracking or of just the types of things we're tracking. But these were kind of the main points that people thought were important to have built in right off the bat. There are things like treatments and metrics. This miles of stream could be miles with wood placements or miles that the stream channel is reconfigured. To really delve into that, you would need to see the treatment data, and unfortunately we don't have that built into this system, but it's something that you could look at more closely if you downloaded the database from Oregon Explorer. So going back to summarize my projects, there are other ways that you could summarize if you wanted to look at completion year, but you kind of have to, it's kind of wonky still because this was one of the things we built early on, and we at OWEB have been putting a lot of our IT resources into building other tools for the grant program, and building the online application, building the project completion reporting. And so this ORIO is kind of working off of a maintenance now. We're not really building new enhancements into it currently, but if we ever, if we do get feedback from folks that there are some things that would be preferable to have in here, we can always make it on a wish list. So I'm just kind of eyeballing a couple projects that were completed in 2020 and click summarize. And then you can see some results from 3 projects. And then similarly, you can actually do a sort. So now we're sorted on subbasin, and we could click these top 3 ALC projects. And I'm pretty sure this one that says City of Yachats pump is a fish screen project. And so we know that we selected 3, but we only have 2 project results, and that's probably because of that there's nothing showing up here for fish screens in our project result category. So that's kind of one of the limitations of using this, but I think summarize my projects is pretty cool. So I'm refreshing my screen again, which I probably should have used the back arrow. Well,
We do
now
have a quick question. Is the login ID and password unique to each individual person who would be reporting, or is it unique to the organization?
Oh, that's a really good question. So it can be unique to a person if that's how you want it to be. If you so the only issue with the user ID being shared is that we only have the capacity to collect 1 email from the user. So if the user ID, and I'll turn my screen back on so I can talk to you. Let's see if I can, oh, or my webcam, whatever. If you have a personal email, but you want to share this account with other people, if there's a notification that needs to get automatically sent to that email, it's only going to go to that 1 person. But that doesn't mean that multiple people couldn't log in with that user ID and password. And often when someone leaves a council, they'll leave their user ID and password for the next person. And then when they begin using it, they can contact me to change it to something, if there's something that you would more easily remember, or if there's some security code questions. So if there was something that, that's, the Patriots aren't my favorite football team, so I don't want that clue, or whatever, you can ask me to help you to change those things. So anyway, or you can just create your own new unique user ID and password and let us know that the other one is no longer active. So we should stop using that one and add the projects to your user ID only. So I think multiple people from organizations are registered in ORIO, and some of them are registered because they're the ones reporting, but some of them might be registered because they just had a need to look at some project data or something. So most of the users are in here to input data, but that I probably should have made that a polling question, is how many of you are actually attending this webinar just for information and you don't report any projects to ORIO. So I don't know if Anna, if you can build that as a polling question, but it would be interesting to find out if there are folks on the webinar today that are, you're just kind of here to find out what kind of information we collect.
Yeah, I don't think I can add a poll after the webinar started, but if anyone would like to share that information in the survey at the end, there are a couple of free response sessions, and you can just kind of answer the question and then add on to it with other information like that.
That sounds great. Okay, so I'd like to turn your attention now to the handout that we provided. This is an example of splitting a project into work sites, and I really want to give kudos to Pat Holliday at the grant SWCD because she was willing to let me take a project that she had split herself into multiple work sites, and I tried to organize some of the information that we collect in a way that you guys would, for this webinar, have a template that you could follow. It doesn't show all of the information that we collect, but it does it does go through the separating out the projects and why. It also lists the why, like, why do I have to report these numbers? Why are you making me go search through documentation or talk to the on-site biologist to get this information? And so this is kind of something that you can have in your back pocket so that in the future you can anticipate what kinds of questions we're going to be asking you when you go to fill it out in ORIO. So I'm going to move this out so it's not a distraction. Oh, okay. Right. All right, there we go. So basically, in this list here, we have a couple of Star Wars related projects to go with the whole cloning wars theme, Endor Creek and Tatooine Creek. But actually, honestly, I took Endor Creek from what's on your work site as Hinton Creek. And this is a true grant number that was reported. So, and before I mentioned that cloning a project is really, I think that it's going to save you the most time, and I feel like if you have any project that is similar on your list, whether or not it's for the same grant, if it's like if we said, oh yes, you're going to have to split this into work sites, but if it's a small grant and you did irrigation system improvements with one landowner and it's in the same area, the goals are the same, the species you're benefiting are the same, all of those things, then let's click on clone and get started, because it's just going to save you so much time. When you clone a project, like you can probably read it here on the screen, but you're creating a data copy and then you can edit it to describe a similar project. And it was intended to save you time so that you're not having to type all the same information multiple times. So the examples we give that is most useful is probably if you have a grant that paid for work at multiple sites. Each site is considered a separate OWRI project. And so when you create that first record, then you can clone it and use it again for these other projects. But what I'm saying now is that I reported a project last month, and this month I have another project to report. And rather than start from scratch, I'm going to clone my last submission to save time. And so I'm hoping that you guys will find this useful, especially given this this template that maybe you can kind of be populating things as you go along. And I would go ahead. I'll read the second example first, but that a private industrial forest landowner has 20 projects to report. They're very similar, and so they can just clone the first one and continue to just make some edits to the cost and the location and add or remove species, and then move on to the next one as well. So I would recommend just cloning everything. It's not going to hurt anything if you clone it, because you'll always have the opportunity to delete it later. And so looking at this, there's quite a few tabs here, and then there's going to be some activities stuff that you have to add at the end, because that is the one thing that we don't clone, is the activities data, since those are often quite different, and we didn't want to double count anything by making that copy sitting there. So as I mentioned, if this was a weed board grant, then by putting that number in, our system can read that and say, yes, this is a weed grant. I'm going to send this user on a different path, and they're going to be reporting some things that are required by ODA. So if you do not have a weed board, then just leave that blank. So we're going to clone this. This is a copy of the Endor Creek, or otherwise known as Hinton Creek, on your worksheet, and we're just going to change that to be Badger Creek. I wanted to be cute and say Dagobah, but it's going to be easier if we're all looking at the same thing. So I'm changing this to say Badger Creek for Fish Enhancement Project. I'm gonna skip over the cost for now, even though I know that this site has a different cost. I kind of want to show you an example later on. So I'm just gonna hit save. And this doesn't, unfortunately, this doesn't do anything when you hit save. I kind of wish that this little logo would change, like I think that it does in one of the other OWeb online applications. But so the next thing, under location info, now we're working in Upper John Day. So we're going to change that. We're going to change the creek name, change the township really quickly to 12 South, 22 East, and section 28. And the county is different, so we're going to delete. Yep, we're going to delete Umatilla, and over here we're going to select Wheeler County. And save. And again, just know it is saved. I'm not sure why it doesn't really let you know that it's saved. The next thing we're going to go to, let's see, I'm looking at paper copies of this worksheet, but so it should be the second, or it's the third sheet if you're looking at it on paper, as I am. And we're going to look at these participants, and we noticed that a couple of these participants didn't work at this work site. So their funds weren't used, or they didn't do on the ground work there. So we can delete the Wild Turkey Foundation, and we can delete the U.S. Forest Service. And notice what that does is we've got people with roles here, and now we no longer have a landowner. The Forest Service was the landowner on the previous project. So now we need to add a new participant. And for this site, it's a private landowner. The private landowner, I guess we could call it L. Skywalker. And it's a landowner, so we do have to save the landowner role. If in this example on your template, we don't have any dollar amount here, but I'm going to go ahead and put $10 in because I want to show you what's going to happen if we do that. We're going to save this participant. Oh, since you've entered cash or in kind, you must add funder role to this participant. Okay, I'm going to add funder. Oops, I don't have a landowner again, and I know this person's the landowner. Okay, I'm going back, and oh, see, it says right here I was supposed to use the control key and mouse to select multiple. So now what I just realized, because I'm using an iMac today, is that it's actually the command key that you have to press and not the control key. But on a PC, it's the control key. So we're going to save this participant. And what other information needs to be changed? It looks like BPA. We need to just edit the cost or the contribution from BPA on this one was slightly different, 14,718. And everything else is fine. Excuse me. And the OWEB grant amount at this site is different. And I want to mention too that the OWEB amount, since we realized that you wouldn't be able to implement this on the ground project without spending admin dollars and the travel costs and everything, that should all be considered part of splitting the cost of the OWEB grant out amongst the work sites. So all of the sum total of all of your cash, if you look at your worksheet all the way to the very end, it should, oh, maybe I didn't total it out. But anyway, the OWEB amounts, if you were to take the sum from all 5 of these work sites, they should, that sum should be the sum of what you spent from the OWEB grant. So, so then we'll save this one. And here we have, the previous project had 2 different entries for ODFW because there was the cooperator that provided technical assistance, and then there was some funding from an OWEB program. So since that OWEB program is not on this project, we're going to delete this entry. And we'll say that, that Russ was helping with the technical assistance, so he remains on the project. So at this time, I think I'm just going to continue to walk through the tabs. So the very next tab is the same. So we could add or change depending on if this landowner had a cropland instead of range pasture. But what I do want to mention here is this may seem like a really minor thing that we're asking you to put this in, and sometimes people don't know if it's really explaining where they worked. And the primary use of land use in our database is our partners at Oregon Department of Forestry and Oregon Department of Ag. And what it's used for is if this project was a managed forest, then the Department of Forestry and the Oregon Forest Industries Council, there's a lot of folks that have an interest in summarizing the data specifically about forest land management. And likewise, the Oregon Department of Agriculture has specific data reporting requirements around water quality management areas. And so they're looking for things that are related to ag. And I think that they are looking at range pasture, cropland, maybe some rural residential, and the ungrazed grasslands. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is we intentionally do not want you just to say that I worked in riparian habitat. We really need to know how that area is being managed. So then moving on to species, and we do have quite a few species on our list, and they're organized by categories. And it's not meant to intimidate you in any way. We were just trying to be as comprehensive as possible because when the inventory first started, it definitely had mostly salmonid focus, and we really wanted people to feel like this was inclusive, and we do care about the conservation strategy. We some of the data that we provide goes to support the sagebrush habitat and sage-grouse conservation efforts. And there's some wonderful oak savanna conservation happening in the Willamette Valley. So we really wanted to be more inclusive of all the different species that people might be wanting to help. But we definitely have a need with our reporting to NOAA fisheries. We have to be able to tell them which salamonid species we're intending to benefit. So we have steelhead on here. Oh, I was going to say you have to go all the way up to C to get to these other ones, but you just add the species, or you take it, you have to click back on it if you want to take it away. Since this project is still intending to benefit steelhead only, we can move on to the next one. And likewise, you can add or subtract goals with the arrow buttons. If your project is doing a fish passage improvement, this is one that you definitely want to send over to be reported under goals. But for the purpose of this project, which is another type of riparian fencing project, we can use the same goals. Permits are, I want to apologize right up front here about this, because we asked this question on the front page, and we probably need to specify it even further than this, because we're getting a lot of data that you guys really don't have to be pursuing or reporting to us. This question was added because the programmer and I, when we were first doing this for creating ORIO, was that were any permits or notifications applicable to the project. He thought that the more general we asked the question, then over time, if anything were to change and we need to collect data on other permits, this question has been asked this way. It's a standard way. But what we're really wondering about is, does your project intend to benefit? And you can see I'm saving this so that we can enter something here. Does your project intend to benefit, or is your permit either a permit from DSL or a permit from the Department of Fish and Wildlife? These are two partner agencies, natural resource agencies, that really need us to share this information with them. And so when we click on DSL, then we type in the GA, and then it's usually a 5-digit number that they need to know, and that helps us to cross-reference against the DSL database, and then we can tell them these are the permits that you had a reporting requirement to OWRI, and these are the permits that actually fulfilled that reporting requirement. The ODF notification number, it's a longer number. It's usually like the year, it's a 4-digit year, and then a dash and another number, and then a longer number at the end. And that is helping them to know which timber sales are you're reporting work near. So anyway, I feel bad that we've had that really general question about permits, and we're getting a lot of data about county permits and other types of land use permits, and that's really, it wasn't our intention to have you guys out pursuing a bunch of different permits to report to us. So if you are reporting a bunch of permits, you can stop doing that right now. And I'm hoping that we will add some language to this to clarify that, so that people aren't having to do additional work that's not necessary. So I think we're done with the first sequence of tabs before we get to activities. And I'm going to click on verify my work, which is something that you would be doing as you're reporting to OWRI, you can kind of check your work. But because we cloned it, we assume that everything was right, except remember I changed this in project. So I can either add a permit, which is the way I answered the question, or I can just quickly take that off since we're not reporting a permit. Okay, and then we go up to verify my work again, and it says we need to report at least one treatment. So then this is where we go to the activities tab. You can access it from that, you can also access it from here, and then there's an extra click. But so this is where all of the different activity types that we collect data and metrics on. And just want to be sure I have the right spreadsheet. So you would be referencing the second page of your spreadsheet in blue. This particular work site, they're reporting riparian fencing. So we're going to visit the riparian tab, and we're going to skip the result for now so that you can see what happens in the verify messages. But we're going to add the treatment that we know we did, which was riparian fencing. So when I mentioned to you that we can sort by alphabetical or traditional, and you know, why would you care? It's really if you have a preference to see things alphabetical, you can sort it that way. But the sort traditional is the way that I have my screen right now, and this is the way that the old paper data form used to show you treatments. And actually, we've added treatments since then because it's just so easy to add treatments on in ORIO. You know, once it's built, I do want to show you something really quick. So if you go to in-stream habitat and click new treatment, and you sort alphabetical, you're going to see this order where all of a sudden bank stabilization shows up, and then channel alteration, and the wood placements, which really is the majority of the in-stream habitat work that gets reported to OWRI, is large wood that's not anchored, but you have to scroll all the way down to the middle to find it. Whereas in the sort traditional, it's going to show up as the very first thing. And it goes through the structure placements, then it moves to off-channel habitat with bank stabilization and channel alteration down below. And as you may have noticed, we added under in-stream habitat anchored structure placement, we've added beaver dam analog structures installed. So that's a pretty exciting thing that we just did. And so I'm able to share that with you. But I'm going to go back to activities, and we're going to enter the riparian fencing. So that's just a quick save. And then you see columns for metrics and detail. This is one of the few projects that has a required detail, and the detail is on your worksheet in a little deeper blue color, it looks like. And so we'll add the metrics first, which are acres first is 0.3, 0.03, and I still got it wrong. And the number of sites treated, we'll say it's 2. It looks like I didn't put that in the little template I made, but maybe we remember it was 2. So now all the metrics show up on your screen, and it still says add. I remember asking the programmer about this years ago, and I just don't know why we weren't able to get rid of that. That still says add. But anyway, I'm going to add just these couple of other things. 5 and 10, 35 to 50. And it looks like we're, I'm gonna need to really blast through this now. So you don't see the detail unless you click to edit it. So what I wanted to show you though was the what's gonna happen when we click verify my work. It's gonna say that you have missing results and you don't have an activity cost. So the first thing we could do is put in an activity cost, and that's on your worksheet under cost by activity type. It's $24,901. And if you verify my work, now you have some more messages. Oh no, why don't these equal each other? Well, if we compare the cost, you can see that I had put in that Luke Skywalker contributed $10, and that was incorrect because the total activity based on our sheet was the other one, the $24,901. So this person's contribution needs to be changed. Oh, but we had him as a funder, so we just need to change the roles to take the funder off. Now, if we go to verify my work, there's still messages under participants. And the reason for that is that we never changed the data on the very first page, which said how much this was going to cost. So that's $24,901. And 0 in kind and save. And then back to verify my work. We're getting really close now. We have activities. It was missing a result. And this happens a lot. I just kind of want to give you this as a tip, is that these are both required results. So if you're getting the message that you still haven't entered a result, it's just because you haven't entered both of them. You do have to get them both saved. So and now there's just one left. And oh, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but it disappeared. Okay, so now when I verify my work, I should not see that message. I don't see any more cost messages, and I just need to upload a map. And oh boy, I didn't really think this through, but I have all these files. Anyway, get off of this. Cancel. Oh, sorry about that. So basically, you just upload a map or a shape file, and there's instructions here for the guidance, and what we actually need is it to be very clearly labeled with all the different activity types that you end up reporting on. I did have a map for this project that I was going to show you, but that's okay. So if we were to get the map uploaded, it would say that it would appear that you have completely entered all of your project information, and then you just click continue. And if you're ready to submit your project, you hit submit, and then it's ready for OWeb staff to review. So you're done. You're done entering this project. But you know, apparently this one has several more work sites. But hopefully I've given you some helpful hints on how to streamline the reporting process, or just things to think about having available to you at the time you sit down to do the reporting. I did want to mention the help before we close it out for questions. And that's, there's an ORIO frequently asked questions document. It kind of also steps you through, like, what should I do if I've got this type of project? This tells you the questions you're going to be asked depending on those projects that have those additional treatment details. And it's basically, if you do plant control, we're going to ask you what weeds species you need that you removed. If you did planting, we have a NOAA requirement that we have to collect the data on what species you planted. Some of these are asking for a specific treatment cost, and that's so that we can report, because we collect it differently than NOAA does, and we have to parse it out for them. It just helps us in managing the data for some of our reporting requirements. But and finally, there's the top 10 reporting errors, and that's kind of a fun one to review, and hopefully that'll give you some help there. But I'm not going to belabor this point right now, but just know that if you ever have any questions, there's always someone here, and we're happy to help. So with that, I guess I'd just like to really thank you for your patience on letting me rattle on for a long time about something I'm really passionate about. I love that there's reporting in. I love that there's reporting out. I love that there's all this good work that's being done on the ground. And so I appreciate you spending the time with me this afternoon doing a tutorial through ORIO.
Thank you, Bobby. That was a really great overview, and thank you to our audience for joining to learn. It looks like we do have a hand raised here. Mary, I'm going to unmute you now, Mary Olson.
Oh gosh, got all this goofy stuff on here. Don't ask me. Don't know what all that is.
Mary Olson, are you there? Oh, okay. So Mary will type her question.
Okay.
The audio is not connected. Let's see. Rita, however, has her hand raised as well. Rita?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, this is Rita.
Hi, Rita.
I have two questions. One is, hi, can you clone from another council's report that has similar parameters?
Yes, you certainly can. You can either, I mean, basically you can just ask, request to have that project added to your list as an example that you could use to clone from. Excellent. It is public information being in a state database, so I don't think there would be any issue with sharing it with you.
Okay, and well, this kind of goes with it. Can we read other projects segregated by type and area, sort of like we can in OGMAS? So if I want to find another council's report and it's riparian fencing, can I look under riparian fencing?
Well, we don't really have the data set up that, or there's nothing like that set up in ORIO. You really have to know which project it is. I guess you could go out to Oregon Explorer and find it through the map viewer tool, and then if you let me know which project, the project number, I could add it to your list. But yeah, I'm not sure what are all those resources in OGMAS, but yeah, we don't really have that same thing in ORIO.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Rita and Bobby. The question we have typed in right now is, I have trouble with the metrics, enter treatment, and results. Could you show an example for planting conifer on, say, 0.25 miles upstream on one side?
0.25. Oh, I don't know what happened to my, I must have closed, when I went to close the screen, it looks like I got rid of ORIO. I didn't mean to. Okay. So, so your question was,
could you show an example for planting conifer on, say, 0.25 miles of stream on one side?
okay. So we'll go ahead and add this to the same project we were working in. We didn't submit that, so we can keep editing. And that was this one here. So so to continue, we're adding to this record. We're going to add a treatment for tree planting. And was it just conifers? Oh, okay.
That was the example the questioner gave. It doesn't really matter, but they're just having a little trouble with entering the treatment and results doing metrics.
Okay. So if you have something like this where we've already recorded everything and everything matched up to this point, and then you went ahead and added something like a planting that was outside of that information, outside of that boundary. And so, right, so what we're essentially what we're saying now is that we treated 2.5 miles along the stream, and it was 40 acres that were planted on one side. If we were to verify my work right now, oh, well, right, I guess it wants me to add a detail first. I thought it would have a angst about the metrics not adding up. I'm hoping that we built that into this, but okay, so we saved some species planted. Oh, and you could also say whether or not you did plant protection, and that can be tubes or cages or like a fenced exclosure. So we save that. And let's see what happens when you say verify my work. Oh, you know, that's not good. That just means that we're gonna have to correct the math together later on, because I was hoping, I thought that this system was built where it did some number checking, but it looks like it didn't. So because we've now added something that's greater than the result, we need to change the result to reflect that, and changing the result happens here. So you click on these links. So these are the ones that would need to be changed so that it now says 40 acres. Or if the fencing was in one place, the 0.3 acres, and the planting was in a completely different space, then oh, I keep going to the wrong thing, sorry. Then your edit of that would look like this. So it's either going to be the sum or the max, depending on where the treatments happen. And then you'd need to do the same thing for the length. So does that help you to see how to report the planting, or is there something else I can relay about that?
Looks like that answered the question. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Okay, are there any other questions before we wrap up?
This link up at the top here gives the whole treatment list that's currently in ORIO if that was something that you wanted to look at also.
Great. Thanks again, Bobby. And those useful links that you pointed out throughout the webinar, many of them will be posted along with the recording of this webinar on the Conservation Partnership website. So attendees can visit that site and share it for anyone who might be interested. We only have a few people left, but for those of you on the line, in case you haven't heard yet, Connect has been postponed to December. Originally, we were not going to have a webinar next month because of Connect, and now we're just kind of thinking about whether we should add another one, if we have time to do that, if it will work out logistically. So stay tuned, and thanks for joining us. Thank you to Bobby, and thank you to OWEB for helping our members learn how to do their jobs efficiently and effectively.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you giving us the platform to share this and provide it as a tutorial. Thank you so much.
It's our
Thanks
pleasure. Thank you
for attending.
Okay, I'm going to close the webinar now. So everyone take care, and hopefully I'll talk to you eventually. Bye, everyone.
Bye.